Welcome. This video is going to share with you an SPSS procedure for those of you that were told in class last night that you had to do a selective procedure. And so the presentation is relevant to the students on RT1 who are responsible for doing the following: looking at physical condition, comparing volunteer with paid firefighters, assessing the number of prior responses, comparing, doing a comparison between volunteered and paid firefighters, and then finally doing a descriptive profile of the seriousness of injuries by gender. And on the wildfire team, RT1, it focuses on comparing areas where wildfires occurred by region. Now, you guys are doing descriptive graphs, descriptive frequency graphs, very similar, almost exactly the same as the procedure I showed you last night, but you're comparing frequencies by certain demographic categories. So I'm going to show you a very streamlined approach where you could produce a graph without doing a select if, and I think this will streamline it and help you out when you follow it. Okay, in my case, I'm interested in doing a descriptive analysis of the location of where injuries occur by gender. So this is what we do. You go to graphs, you go into legacy dialogues, you go to bar graph. We're going to do a bar graph, but we're not going to do a simple. We're going to do a cluster. And the reason why it's called a cluster graph is that we're going to cluster our frequencies by the demographic category that we want to look at. So for example, if in my case, I want to look at the location of injuries of firefighters by male and female. So the frequency of the location of injury is going to be clustered by gender. So for example, if you're doing a comparison where you're looking at the physical condition among firefighters between career and volunteer, you would be looking at the frequency of the physical condition clustered by whether a firefighter is a career firefighter or whether he or she's a volunteer firefighter. So that's the same exact principle that you guys will be doing that I mentioned before. So you make sure you click on cluster, don't change anything here, go into define, and make sure that your percent cases, just like if you were producing a straightforward bar graph, make sure that you have your percent cases. Give it a title. So if you're only doing one graph, which in this case we're only doing one graph, just give it a name, graph 1. So I would do location of injury by gender of firefighter. I'm just abbreviating, but in your memo I'd want you to spell out firefighter. I'm only doing this to keep the presentation short. Let me just take this out. So your category axis is going to be your management problem. It's going to be the specific problem that you're interested in describing in item 1 of your assignment. So in my case, it would be location or story where the injury occurred. So I'm going to bring that in, and then the clusters, that is going to be gender, because I'm going to want my frequency of where the injury occurred. In other words, what percentage of firefighters were injured somewhere in the building, okay? Where did it occur by gender? So I would bring in gender. And so if you click OK, this is the graph that you would get. So you can see it's color-coded. So here, now, before I discuss anything about the graph, you do the exact same thing that you would do with your simple bar graphs last night. You're going to want to double click on it and get your editor. Okay, and we're going to want to use our little target to label our graphs. Okay, get that done and go through and do that. And then when you're done with that, just click the X to get rid of it, and you're set to go. And so here's the comparison. So let's look at ground level. We're comparing the frequency of the percentage of firefighters who were injured on the ground floor, comparing male and female. Notice here's the code up here. Blue is for male, green is for female. So again, same exact thing when describing your results. Look to the biggest, go to next, and conclude with small. So we'd start, and we would start with close to 70% of female firefighters were injured on the ground floor versus just a little over half of male. So a very large difference that we're seeing here between male and female. Where on the other hand, a much higher percentage of male firefighters are injured in buildings 1 to 2 stories versus females. So, and a very small percentage of injuries occur below ground or 3+ stories. So essentially that's your comparison that you would do. So for those of you who I mentioned who have this task, you would do this procedure. So if you want to replay this video and just go through the steps, please do so. And then if you try to do this procedure and you're still having some challenges with it, please call me or email me. And so essentially that's the conclusion, and I think this helps streamline what I was trying to convey last night with Select If. Thanks.